A very warm welcome to Emma's Electronic Dance Managers Meetup number 4. Lovely to see so many of you here. My name is Michelle Ronquillo and I am Emma's event manager. Just a little bit about us. Within Emma, we unite music managers organization across 16 European countries, which represent more than 3,000 managers across Europe. We've made it our mission to strengthen European managers globally through the Empower program, which encompasses education, advocacy, networking, and research. Empower is a project co-founded by the European Union. If you want to know more about us, or if you want to stay up to date with the upcoming events, make sure to visit our website, follow us on social media, and of course, join our dedicated electronic WhatsApp group. And you can also sign up to our newsletter. And I will put all the links in the chat in a little bit. And also within the chat, there is general managers contact list where you can leave your details and find the details of others. And another thing, also when you log off Zoom at the end of the session, there will be a super brief survey will pop up. So take a moment, please, to fill it out, as your feedback is super important for us. I'm going to share the agenda of today. Let me know if you see it properly. Can you see that? Perfect. I can see some nodding faces. So we are in very good company. We'll dive into how PR can elevate electronic artists in their careers. And our session is going to be moderated by manager and member of the EMA Electronic Dance Steering Committee, Ashka Grushulka. Make sure, please, to add your questions in the chat, and we will make sure that they get answered at the end of the conversation. And also remember, at the end of the conversation, we will open the rooms for breakout rooms, networking breakout rooms. So I will let you know when this is happening to give you the chance to stay or to leave. But of course, it's better if you stay. And without further ado, Ashka, over to you.
Thanks, Michelle, and sorry for my little laugh. It's always funny when people from abroad who are not, from a Slavic region are trying to pronounce our surnames, and it's sorry for my laugh, because it was so
I
cute.
did it in a Spanish way.
Yeah, exactly. So like, oh God, oh, perfect. Hello, everyone. I'm Ashka. My DJ name is Virtual Geisha. So I'm here. I'm in a role of a moderator of this panel. And I think the topic is so hot and so many people wanted to talk and be here. And it's super nice that you also have your video camera on. It's always nice to talk with human faces and not the names. But let's just jump into the topic, because I think there is a lot of things that we can cover today, this evening. But at the beginning, I just would like to ask our guests to do a brief introduction, who you are, what you do, maybe little success stories already here. And yeah, Nikki, let's start with you.
Okay, we'll keep it brief. I've been a PR for many years. I've done artist PR. I now do a lot more event PR. So hopefully I'll be able to bring the aspect of how you can do a lot of promotion using events your artist may be playing at. So I work with the Amsterdam Dance Event and many festivals. So looking forward to hearing all your questions and how we can help you.
Yeah, Clara, please.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. So apologies, I'm a bit muffled today. So I've got a bit of a cold, which I brought back to Ibiza, where I currently am from London at the weekend. So I run SUS Media, which I set up over 10 years ago. But I've been, like Nikki, I've been doing PR for many years. Primarily, I actually do artist PR and label PR for such artists as Danny Tenaglia, Global Underground. We've got quite a big announcement tomorrow. Balance, Celador, Joyce Muniz, Buddha Kid. But also, we also have started to work on some crossover events. If it's a label we work with, such as Balance for their New Balance Croatia Festival. And yeah, really excited to have this debate on how we can assist in PR for especially artists and labels.
Great, thank you. David, hello.
Hey everyone, how's it going? good afternoon or evening, I guess, depending where you are. So yeah, I'm David. So I work at K7 Music. So we're a group of label group that's made up of K7 Strut and 7K, and we mainly work across jazz and electronic, and then some kind of neoclassical stuff as well. And we also have a distribution part of a company where we work with loads of fantastic labels, kind of mainly situated in the electronic space. I think K7 is also really known for its long-standing compilation DJ kits, and I work really kind of across that, and a lot of the K7 producers, yeah, kind of across marketing and A&R for that. So obviously, always thinking about PR, always working with a lot of different PRs, talking strategies, and really trying to stay as up to date as possible with how the landscape's moving, and moving so quickly it is. But yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting to you.
Thank you, David. So talking about landscape, I just wanted to ask you in the beginning to maybe do a little zoom out for the topic, how you actually see a PR evolution in electronic music over the past few years. You know, let's start with Nikki.
Oh dear, the big question to go first. I mean, I work across live and electronic music, and I have to say, I do find with the explosion that happened in America, there are a lot more online sites covering electronic music than there seem to be for bands. So in that sense, it's a good thing because you've got a lot of places you can get news stories on, premieres, whatever. And I suppose I'll let Cara talk more about those things with the different things. But obviously, with all the social side of it, that kind of has changed, because now when you're working with media, you have to see which ones are going to post it on socials and do other things as well. And don't get me started on techno Bible, techno whatever, and all that stuff as well. But sticking to more the media landscape, I do think there is a lot of opportunity there. But it as you said, it does keep evolving, because one minute there's premieres, then there's not premieres, then there's video premieres as a thing, then it isn't a thing. And you just got to really keep on top of what the new trends are and how to benefit from them. And also the writers seem to change constantly. So it is really difficult to keep on top of who's the best person to send something to for a review of a particular genre. So that does, I find, become more difficult.
Great, thank you. Cara, David?
Yeah, I think it's one of these things, like it's constantly evolving. You know, I mean, I look back at how things were when I started 5 years ago, even 1 year ago, even 6 months ago, and it's constantly changing. As Nikki says, not only are there new magazines, websites, radio stations, etc., springing up all the time, and sadly closing, staffing are changing. It feels like what people are looking for is always changing as well. And I think as a PR, we have to wear so many different hats. You know, it's not just a case of just pitching things out. And I'm a very strong advocate of one-to-one pitching. I don't just do mass mail outs. I think it's really lazy. It annoys me when PRs do. I think unless you're sending out, I mean, obviously a major release, for example, I mean, a DJ Kicks one being a good one, or a Global Underground piece. You know, if you're sending out an EP from a lesser known artist or an emerging artist, it's just going to get ignored. So it's really building up those relationships with press. But one thing for me, which really stood out, apart from all the new sites that are springing up, is payment. And so many of these sites, they want money for what you do. It's this pay to play. And we're not just talking premieres, but we're talking interviews, guest mixes, which I kind of abhor, because surely if you've got a really A-list artist or even a B-list artist who's providing something valuable, they're spending hours of their time planning a guest mix. And then this website's like, yeah, well, we want 200, 300 euro, pounds, dollars for this. Kind of grates with me a bit. And even today, more and more sites I'm speaking to, and we're talking decent sites, not just the sort of ones where you only get small traction. You know, it just seems like everyone wants money now. And of course, everyone is doing a lot more with less these days, but it does feel as though it's eating up into everyone's budget a lot. So the whole getting things free editorial, it does seem like it's dwindling, and you have to be even more creative.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, that's very interesting topic, you know. And how does it look like from the label perspective and the head of marketing for the label?
Yeah, label perspective. Yeah, it's tough. I think I think we all know that if we do want to have a really successful release, it's really important that press is a part of that. We'll never have a successful release that doesn't have any press running. I think it's probably more that maybe press became a slightly smaller or 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 maybe just that kind of obviously with socials becoming so important, um, socials are a good short form way of telling a story, but press is really where artists can go in depth and talking about the concepts and their work in a way which is really hard to do in short form, and that's why it's so important. I think, I think from a label wise, we just try and be really strategic and work really hard with the artists and the PR team to just make sure that we're pitching to the right places and getting the right angle on that artist and really, like someone said earlier, just making sure we're super up to date with our contacts because that can change so quickly. But yeah, that's kind of how it looks like from our side. I think we're also aware that with press and it's all a state. Maybe some stuff could pop really quickly in the past, but I think it's always about building up that story with like a key number of journalists and that can takes place over a few years because now there's also so much music being released, so it's hard for us to judge what's kind of press worthy as well. It's not like the opportunities have increased that much in terms of magazine space or something like that.
And in this like super fast releasing reality, what are like the timelines that you're trying to preserve like as a label? Can you give us a little framework that you're working with?
I think if something's kind of so obviously we work across original artist albums, EPs, which can be one-off EPs or EPs as part of bigger record deals or album deals. Ideally, I think we want to be working with artists over a much longer period of time because we see how long it takes to develop them at press. You can do maybe 2 EPs and then into album with someone, and it might only be around album that you're starting to get a considerable feature when you've had that time over a year and a half, over 2 years of slowly building towards that. I think we really like to, we need to make sure that we have music in, 5-6 months in advance of when the record's coming out. I know press will be pitching 4 months in advance for any of those, or 4 or 5, or depending on the size of the artist, even bigger if they're going for bigger kind of cover features and stuff like that. Obviously, they fill up so quickly. So, yeah, I mean, we like to work with artists over a long period of time to help them grow and be part of that. And we're also aware that all of the conversations that our in-house digital pitching team, our press teams, that are out of house are having, they just take a really, really long time because you can't just keep badgering people with the same news. There has to be a different story, and it's really important to be patient with that.
Yeah, like and how you see like Nikki, the timelines from your perspective as a PR person, when you work not as a someone who is trying to keep covering the release for your artist from your label, but when people working with you, what you would like the people have in mind when working with timelines for the PR outreach?
I would say Clara's probably better qualified to answer this one because I don't work with as many artists as I used to. But there is a good example of working with Dave Clark this year with his album because he did a 30-year anniversary of his Archive 1 release. And the idea with the label there was to basically promote it all year. And what they did was they were quite clever. They had different remixes of older tracks dropped at different points throughout the year, because as we just said, it does take a long time to build these things. And, even when you've been doing it for years, a journalist might take 5 emails to reply to you because they're so busy. So it's not just you, it's us as well. Everyone's just so busy. So that's one of the changes I should have mentioned earlier, that I do find it takes longer to get decisions and to get through to people now. So when you have good relationships that you've built over time, that really does help get those faster answers. So with that campaign, we were able to get, you know, like reviews around the remixes, and then big features dropped at different times throughout the year, and also use the gig dates to get different press in different countries around those things as well. So we kind of really dragged it out. But that was like for an album campaign, so that probably wouldn't work for a single unless you had different remixes and stuff. But that's kind of an example of a very long timeline and trying to maximize it in all the different ways you can by dropping new bits, different storylines or different interviews. And obviously Dave, he likes the long narrative because he's a man of words, and people tend to like his words because he's often quite controversial. So, you know, often people want to do a longer interview with him because he's got something to say. So hopefully that helps with that one. But that's a very niche example.
Yeah, but a great one, really. But Clara, how you work with this kind of timelines, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we're finding that timelines are getting longer and longer just because, as David says, there's so much music being released and it's just become even more competitive. Also, we are moving towards more working with artists on an ongoing long-term relationship. And it's all about, like you say, regardless of if it's an up-and-coming artist or an established artist, it's all about telling the story about what they're up to. And if it's just a one-off EP or a single, it's really hard to do that because, you know, as Nikki says, there's so many, press gets so many emails, and especially if it is an up-and-coming artist, you know, you got to just tell the story about them. And press often, they might like what they hear on the first time, but it's maybe not quite right. They want to know what else they have coming up. So I mean, at the moment, the artists that we're working with, you know, we're looking at the whole of next year. In terms of actually pitching for albums that we're working on, we're all working at least 4 months in advance, 4 to 6 months at least. Like David was saying, depending on what we're looking for, we are looking for covers. If we are looking for like major mixes and things like Mixmag, DJ Mag, Crack, etc., you know, Radio 1 mixes. Because that's just the long lead times, and it could be a fantastic album and a really exciting artist. But, you know, if you're pitching too short, then, you know, they want to know about the longer lead times. And also what's really important is I'm a huge, you know, advocate for a collaborative approach. And what I find has been the most beneficial is when we all work together, not just the PRs, but with the managers and also with like booking agents as well, because I want to know the whole picture. I want to know from the artist exactly what they've got coming up, not just in terms of releases, but events, you know, their tours, other activities, just anything they're interested in. You know, it could be other projects they've got on the go, any interest, because if we don't know what's coming up from the managers or the booking agents, then you lose out on so many opportunities as well. So I say to them, please let me know, even if it's like something that's coming out end of next year or a tour or a festival, we need to know this because it's things like this that are gold dust, especially if you're then speaking with, you know, different territories as well.
Yeah, that's kind of overwhelming when you started to think, you know, that there is so many things to do, so many people to actually kind of get it into the loop, you know, and to keep it coherent, I guess. Yeah. And Nikki, you also mentioned about the power of the relationships and the good relationships. So I wanted to ask you, what advice do you have for managers looking to build strong relationships with PR companies, PR freelancers, and media outlets?
I mean, you know, as Clara said, you've got to be around the table having those conversations, because also that builds trust as well. And the more you can trust each other, the more honest you can be, you know, because if you've just started a relationship and something isn't right and you don't feel brave enough to be able to say, actually, that's probably not the best idea, you need to do this, and you're sitting there going, oh, if I say anything, am I going to lose my job? So you have to build that honest relationship where you're allowed to be critical or say that maybe that's not the right path, let's try something else. So that is also important, to find people you click with, that you can work with like that. I mean, building relationships with journalists and media, actually, I think that's a good thing for managers to do, because even though people like me and Clara are in between doing all the hard work, and there's nothing like an ego boost for a journalist when he's met the manager or someone higher up, or they like to feel part of it, that they've been made a bit special. They've met different peoples in the team, and they've got to speak to someone else. So whenever we're doing interviews backstage at festivals or at ADE, for example, where Clara was doing lots of interviews with her artists with us, the manager's there, he's meeting the press as well. You've said hello, you have a chat, they remember you. And then if you need a favor later, you could also drop them an email or say, hey, we're doing this event, do you want the exclusive on this, or do you want to come on a press trip with us to cover something else? So meeting these people in person in those backstage environments, I think is very important, because although you're not doing all the legwork, if they've met you and they like you, that does help in the mix, shall we say, in my experience anyway.
Yeah, and you mentioned, Clara, also the president advisor, BBC One, right? So like this kind of places where all the both emerging and celebrity artists want to kind of apply and be there. So I would like to ask you, because I think that there's a lot of people can take something from themselves from this question, is like what are the key elements of pitching electronic music content, the DJ mixes, the live sets, all this, creators music stuff now to digital platforms or to magazines? What you would advise to this manager?
Yeah, I mean, what we find as well for its managers is give us as much information as possible. It's all about the key assets. It's one thing. For example, artists that we're working with at the moment, even if they've got a really fantastic EP out or album on a really cool label, they want to know what else they've got coming up, where they're touring, which territories, who's supporting them. That's why obviously we need the reports, sort of the DJ promo reports, which radio stations are supporting them. So it's all about the bigger picture as well. And, as we've been saying, it's often like, maybe the first release, they'll say, okay, well, let's see how that release goes, and then we'll build up to it as well. And it's also about pitching the artists at the right time as well. I mean, okay, everybody wants an RA podcast, but, essential mix. But, if you've got an artist that's kind of, pretty fresh out the traps and you're pitching them super early, it's just going to maybe not look like you really know what you're doing. I mean, okay, it's all good to be enthusiastic and say, look who I've got, this is somebody that's going somewhere, and getting it on their radar. But, if you're pitching for something that's way above really where they're at in their career, it's just going to maybe make you look a bit amateur. So, it's all about pitching things correctly. For example, going for something that's maybe, if it's like a DJ mag, going for something that's a bit more on our radar type, get to know pieces, bubblers, rather than going for the full sort of HQ top mixes as well. But yeah, I mean, this is all about where relationships are key. And there's artists that we work with who, it's been so gratifying to see their career really rise. People like Theo Cottis, Matissa, but I mean, I worked with them at the beginning when people were like, who? Never heard of them. They've never toured outside their own territory. Theo hadn't really played outside Edinburgh. Matissa hadn't really played outside Italy. So, you're trying to speak to somebody in London, about them, and they're just like, well, are they going to be playing London anytime soon? So it's all about sort of getting it on their radar. And it's especially gratifying when actually a few years later, these press are like, I want to write about them. I want them to do a guest mix. I want them to be a big headline, cover feature as well. But yeah, it does take time to build these things.
Yeah, do you think that there's also big budgets needed to do this? Because I think that there's a lot of managers that they had to work with smaller budgets. And do you have any practical tips that can help them?
It really depends on the artist. I mean, I think if they've got a really good story behind them and their music's strong, they're really keen to do interviews, then it makes it a lot easier. I mean, we also work with artists who, bless them, they're just all about the music. They maybe just wanted to be in their studio. They don't want to do the big face-to-face interviews, the big fashion shoots, the big glossy photos for photo shoots, etc. It's kind of, they just want to be making music or DJing perhaps, and obviously that does make it a bit more limited. But then if it's a really great artist, then the music can do the talking. But we've worked with artists. I mean, I try and do as much as possible. We try and do as much as possible without the big budgets. But obviously, if someone says, we want this particular cover, and we know it's one that there will need to be some spend behind it, be it ads for their tour, for albums, etc., then of course we're very honest with managers about that as well. There's no point saying, yeah, we can get that, no problem. But, for the most part, I wouldn't say there's big budgets needed, certainly the ones that we've worked with, but obviously it does help. I mean, I think maybe for it'd be interesting to hear Nikki's take on events, because certainly the events that we're working with, for labels that we've worked with for a while, we're finding that more and more, especially for a partnership, will want money behind it as well, which, if it's a small event at, say, the Garden Tisner with a 5,000 capacity, it's a bit harder than if it's somewhere with like 50,000, 100,000 capacity.
Yeah, how is it with the events in that case, like when you promote the events?
Yeah, I mean, I'll do it briefly because I think it'd be great for David actually to talk about media buying for labels and stuff, because that's probably different from artists or managers particularly putting their budget into that. But yeah, briefly, normally whenever I send a press release out for a festival, I get the marketing team emailing me going, oh, if you want a news piece, it's this much, and this is our festival packages. So festivals seem to be like, the cash cow for a lot of media, where they seem to make their money out of events and things. Because I remember during the pandemic when I was talking to a lot of the media when they needed to survive and, what was happening. So I said, oh, are the record labels filling the space of advertising then that festival and events, used to fill? And they went, no. So I thought that was quite interesting from the label perspective, that they weren't doing as many advertising. So the media do still really rely on clubs, events and festivals from that side. But as Clara said earlier, it is a slippery slope of the paid for articles and mixes that is now creeping into the artist PR side as well.
Yeah, and David, how it looks like from the label perspective and from the perspective of a person who works closely with artists, how can managers collaborate effectively with PR teams to amplify the events and releases?
Yeah, with events and releases, I think it's really about. I mean, from our experience, it's really about having that close relationship with the artist, being like pretty realistic about what's achievable in a certain time frame from the topic. Like Clara said, you don't want to be pushing for the big thing too early, because it just makes everyone look, or it doesn't give it the best chance of succeeding, and keeps maybe the expectation too high for the artist, rather than setting the expectations a little bit more realistically. But it's also, really like, for the manager, I think just being able to work really tightly with the label and the artist, and also protecting the artist, but really helping them to bring out their unique story. I mean, because sometimes the artists won't really know what it is, because they won't see what's unique about themselves or their journey, because it's their everyday life, and they might leave out certain details which actually do make a story, or they might bring other people kind of into that world. Yeah, with media buying and stuff, I mean, for sure, there's not the same capacity for probably to spend on print or even online stuff as there would be for festivals, because they're obviously advertising an event that's happening, and there's like quite a simple kind of cash flow coming back there, or maybe not simple, but it's probably a little easier to monitor. But of course, I think now for any label, you need to have events running anyway. You need to have ways for fans to engage with the music that you're releasing. You can't just be releasing stuff without having that focus on getting people in the space together and listening to music and listening to the artist's music that you want to help put out into the world.
I just made a quick look to the chat, and there is a question which is actually very nice, I would say, and it's very related to the things that you said before, which is like, do you have some examples of what is a good artist's story? I think that each of you can maybe make some pinpoints of this topic here. What's actually the true good artist story?
I was wondering, for this, do you mean an art example of a really good story of an art, like how, a success story, for example, or is it, for example, what you're looking for when you're pitching an artist? I took it as a success story, but I wasn't quite sure if that was what Nikolai was meaning.
Yeah, I don't know. We can ask Nikolai. You can elaborate if you want. But I understood that is a question about the story behind the artist who wants to, get be like more visible, get a better PR, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, if they say we'll do it on basic, like the good sort of story behind them, I guess it's a case of just finding out as much as possible about the artist as well. For example, you almost like get to the point where the artist kind of, it's really important to almost like become almost like really friends with the artist as well. I mean, this is why, as much as we may find it frustrating at times, WhatsApp's great, just constantly having conversations. And, sometimes I feel like a bit like almost a bit of a sort of mini manager as well, because, they'll often be asking, what people looking for, what should I be doing, etc. And just, finding out from them exactly what they've been up to, kind of not just about their, music, etc. and what they've got coming up in terms of music and touring, but just everything about their lives, their interests, basically just get to know about their sort of day-to-day and interests. So I'm not sure if that was what they were meaning in terms of like the story, or if it was more a sort of success story as well. I don't know if Nikolai's actually answered.
I mean, I could maybe try and help.
Oh yeah,
I can maybe try and help and answer that as well. I know when I've worked with some smaller artists in the past, often they're from a different country. So it's how big are they in their own country? Because if they're playing at all the major clubs and they're the leading techno DJ, in Slovenia or something, that can really help like then progress. Well, look, they're smashing it in this territory and now they're bringing their sounds to the rest of Europe, so those kind of small little stories can even be helpful. It doesn't need to be that they're a fashion model and a DJ, or a fashion designer, or they're a photographer and a DJ, but all these things can help, as Clara said, about their personal life and hobbies. So anything can be kind of weaved in. Have they done a collaboration with something? What musical instrument do they play? So you can probably find a story in anything really.
And I think as well, with the artists that basically, they don't want to do the photo shoots, they don't want to talk about their love of cooking or cycling or anything like that, or bird watching. They're very much like, I just want to make music. And there's plenty of artists we work with who are like that, and that's at all levels. But thankfully, see there's lots more sort of and actually one piece that I do like doing and pitching is for a lot more of the sort of textile things. I mean, unfortunately, Future Music magazine's just gone online only with things like Music Radar and Music Tech. Obviously DJ Mag, obviously they've got the tech section at the back as well, and things like that for the artists that just kind of want to stay in the studio or on tour. They don't want to do the big talking about their personal lives, that want to keep that separate. There's plenty, I mean, a lot of them do love talking about their technology, and then there's plenty of aficionados and other DJs, producers, and just fans who find it fascinating what plugins people use, and how the music came together. Actually working with people who are real sort of musicians as well, hearing what other producers and DJs say, is fascinating. So it doesn't have to just be about the say fashion side of things, the look, or about things that a lot of people don't feel comfortable talking about, which is why I would never pitch artists to do those that I know aren't confident about. So that's why, again, it's good to know from the managers what the artists are comfortable doing, because you don't want to make someone feel really uncomfortable and unhappy, because ultimately that is not going to make for a good relationship for anybody.
Yeah, and it's not authentic, and I guess people see it immediately. Like David, how you use the artist story? Are you doing the artist story? Are you working with some PR outlets that they making the story for the artist that you really?
No, not that they would never make it. I think we just try and spend time with our artists and work out across all media kind of what is it they're interested, what are they interested in talking about, and what makes them unique, or what makes their perspective unique. How have they approached making their records? What personal experiences are they open to talking about? What aren't they? Some of it might be more image based. Some of it might be, like Carol said, I think the tech pieces can be really fantastic with that, with people that really want to go in depth, and also get great engagement and get reposted. And yeah, I think with Crude and Dorfmeister recently, we've kind of slightly been more social media for the time being, but we'll move into press as they do, and because they have done some more tech-focused features. But people love seeing inside other artist studios to see what they're working with. It's also, when you can get photos or video that make up part of the bigger feature, I think it's a really great way for people to engage and see what these artists are working with or not working with, as the famous 4Tech meme goes, in terms of this is where I wrote and produced the record, and it's just a laptop with some monitors. So, you can kind of spin it anyway. Like, you don't have to use fancy, it's bringing that personality of the artist out, really, in a way that suits them, is comfortable for them, like it was talked about before, because I think that's the really important thing. And then as the label, we help them bring out the themes in more abstract ways, whether it's artwork and helping them with the direction and then strategy around that. There isn't really a boilerplate, to be honest.
And what do you think that what are the most common mistakes that actually managers do when working with the PR teams? Like how can they avoid them? I think, Nikki, what do you think? And Clara, the first.
What common mistakes in PR?
Yeah. Like with the managers, like approaching the PR teams when they start to work with them, or when they want to work with them. What's the biggest mistakes?
I guess probably one of the number one mistakes is not having the timing right, because there's a right and a wrong time to get a manager, and there's also a right and a wrong time to get a PR. So, obviously, as we know, it can cost a bit of money to have a PR, whether it's a retainer or per project. So you really need to make sure your artist is in that right moment to do it. Like, have they got a tour coming up? Have they got a release? Like, what's the plan in the next month? So is it worthwhile you really putting that effort in to take them to that next level? Because as we know, there are quite a lot of things you can do yourself. If you're releasing with a digital service provider, they often have add-ons where they can help you with some promotion and marketing, getting all your social media up to date, creating content. So there are some things you can do yourself, and also there are some media that are open to new artists reaching out to them as well. So it's kind of really fine-tuning where you are with your artists to see if you're at that right stage. And I think the other thing is managing expectation, because the amount of times I hear the word top-tier media, and people don't want DJ Mixmag or some of these media they're going to make you, and they want The Guardian and Vogue, and it's just managing those expectations. There are certain levels you need to get to build and build and build. But the other thing I would say is when people forget the media that made them, the amount of times that then when I'm dealing with maybe another PR or a manager, and maybe they're at Amsterdam Dance Event or a festival, and they've got offers from, local radio stations or media. It might be, I don't know, DJ Mag France, Mixmag Netherlands or whatever, or FG Radio from Belgium. And it's a no to all of them. But these are some of the media that helped you on your career journey. And from my perspective, I find it quite bizarre that then all of those are declined. I mean, I had an example of one radio station who got very upset with an artist when the interview was declined, because that artist actually had a DJ mix show on their station, and they were very angry and threatening to pull it. So I think, remember your roots as well. I mean, you can't do every interview, of course, but just remember the people that made you, because the more friendly in the relationships you build with media along your way, they're going to keep thinking of you. And whenever they're doing pieces about New Year pieces, oh, I love that DJ and that guy, they were lovely, I'm going to ask them to appear in this feature. So it's all about maintaining those relationships as well, not thinking you're now above that and you want to be in vogue. That's my mini rant over.
That's great, Yeah, Clara, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think I 100% agree with everything Nikki said there. And just to follow on from it as well, I think, managing expectations is so key, whatever level the artist is at, the label, the release, You know, there's no point saying to somebody, especially if they're maybe, you know, whatever, if they're sort of maybe up and coming, you know, saying, oh yeah, we can get you a, you know, Mixed Mag UK cover, you know, mixed digital cover, obviously now, or Essential Mix. Now, obviously that could well be something realistic to look at in a year down the line. And that's why, you know, when I work with artists on, you know, a sort of ongoing retainer, you know, we always do look at sort of like, we do look at the, you know, the year ahead, you know, we don't just look at like the next few months, the next release. It's all about long-term planning and where are you now? Where do you want to be? That's what it's all about. But, you know, for every single release I work on, even if it's an artist, an ongoing relationship, you know, we will always look at, you know, we'll put together a PR plan, a really robust PR plan for everything from, you know, premieres, guest mixes, interviews, playlists, news reviews, best new tracks, YouTube placements, social media placements, etc. And we get the manager to sign off on that, or the label and the artist, because what we don't want is for us to say, okay, well, what about this guest mix? We think this is a really good fit for the artist, and it to be signed off and then have them go, oh no, actually we don't want to do it after we've pitched it to somebody, because that just makes us all look like complete idiots, like we don't speak to each other, you know. So it's really important. So what I will say to, you know, when I'm working with a manager, when I'm working with a label is, you know, this is the PR plan, are you happy with it? And if someone says, look, I don't really like that publication, or it's not really the look I'm going for, or, you know, for whatever reason, then fine, take it out, no problem. But, you know, once again, as Nikki said, sometimes you get people going, oh, I just want to do RA, Mix Mag, Vogue, Guardian, etc., Radio 1 Essential Mix, which for some artists that's fine if that's where they're at. But, you know, like I say, it's, you know, we can't, you know, we can't all be doing that. So, you know, I think it's all about being realistic, managing expectations with people from the start, and that's what keeps those relationships going. And that's why we work with the same artists and labels, you know, for ongoing for years on years, because they know that we're not going to basically bullshit them.
Yeah, thank you. I see that we have like two questions in the chat. Sorry. From your perspective, at what point is an artist considered big enough to be pitched or for high-profile opportunities like major mixes? Oh, I think we covered this a little bit, or magazines covered. What steps can emerging artists take to position themselves for these milestones? So I think that the question is how to get up in this PR ladder, you know, higher and higher.
I mean, I've had artists that are, you know, lower level emerging artists get Mixed Mag, DG Mag, mixes, RA coverage. You know, it don't have to be, you know, headlining, you know, Field Day or something, or Glastonbury or something to be at these levels, you know. But what press want to know is, you know, what they've got coming up over the next few months. You know, it could be a fantastic EP or album they've got, but they also want to know what else they have coming up. That it's not, I mean, okay, if it's like obviously a DJ Kicks or something, then you can obviously hang it on that. But, you know, if it's like an EP on like Running Back or something, you know, just using Narcissus as an example, because obviously I worked together with Nikki with Narcissus at AD and got some fantastic coverage for them. You know, they also want to know, press also want to know what other releases they have coming up, who supported them, you know, where they're playing, what gigs they're doing. And if you're able to, they're playing at, you know, I don't know, Panorama Bar, or they're playing at Fabric, or they're playing at, you know, it's certain places that you know that those press are covering. You know, if the press love a particular sound and your artist, even if they're maybe not at that high level, but, you know, they're almost like aligning themselves with the artist, they're being supported by the artist at a higher level, you know, then go for it. And that's what I always do. I always aim high. And quite often I have had artists be covered that perhaps we wouldn't necessarily have thought automatically would be at that level. But, you know, if they've got everything lined up, then even if it's not right then, 3 months down the line, I've had press come back to me and say, actually, you know what, that artist you pitched to me, would they be up for doing the Mixed Mag mix? Would they be up for doing the interview in Resident Advisor? So, you know, it's just constantly keeping on the radar with, you know, what you've got coming up. But, you know, you don't have to be headlining or major labels to be kind of, I think, just go for it. But as Nikki said, you know, there's a lot of people that, you know, you need to be at the right level to work with a manager and to work with a PR, because we need to be able to tell your story. And, you know, I think that's why, you know, it's all about making sure you have everything in place.
Okay, sure. Let's do a little wrap up between we're gonna do the breakout rooms, right? So super quick and dirty thoughts, you know, like a brief even drafts, whatever, but well, 2024 and your advices to managers who are new to PR and want to gain momentum for their artists? So let's start with David, maybe. Yes.
Oh, that's a tough one. 2024. Yeah, I think it's really just that you've got to have something firing in every part of the artist business, really. There have to be the shows. There has to be the kind of releases lined up, and I think kind of Clara was talking about this as well. I think it's really about actually you're almost better off the artist going quiet for a while, storing up a lot of music, planning everything out for 2 years, and then basically knowing that once you start releasing music, you have this plan that goes on for 2 years, rather than thinking we have this EP and then the next one might come in 6 months, and maybe it's really maybe it's more just that kind of build up that music, and know that it's the best case scenario. You have the next 2 years planned out of releases, and that can actually take you through to and probably reach some of those targets that you want to reach, and make it much easier for the rest of the team. But I get that's a big ask for people.
Just be prepared for 2 years to work of, something like that.
I think so. Yeah, I think of it like that rather than it just being release based.
Yeah, because I mean, releases can get moved back. I mean, God, I've got an artist I'm working with at the moment. I won't say who. They're a really great artist. They've had some really big support, and they've got an album that's coming out and it's on vinyl. And because of vinyl pressing plants, it was supposed to come out in October, then November, then December, then January, and it's probably going to be spring. And the artist is really upset with the label. The label's like, there's nothing we can do about it. We've obviously been, got press lined up that we keep having to push back. But thankfully, the artist has got other releases coming out. They're touring well. They've got other things to talk about. So, it's not just hanging on that one release, because otherwise it would be somewhat difficult. But yeah, I think, as David was saying as well, it's really key as well for managers to try and stick to timescales as best as possible and plan out, a release every, a year with a certain amount of releases in it as well, plus obviously touring too, and I do think that 100% if store up the music, because one artist I was working with a year ago, we're still working together, but obviously they're in the studio at the moment. They had a couple of incredible EPs on really cool labels, got amazing support, everything you could hope for. They were getting amazing bookings, amazing DJ support, and then they've not released music for the past year and a half. And then unfortunately, people have short attention spans, press, DJs, consumers, everyone's attention spans are so short these days that you're basically almost back to square one with that artist. And it's such a shame, because we could have built on something amazing and they would have got to, an incredible level. But, and obviously there's personal reasons for it often, but, it's basically you need to really have a plan and stick to it as well and all work together on it.
Nikki, would you like to add something from your side?
I think, as I said, I was going to bang on about events. I'll use that tack to be different to everybody else, because I really believe that you should definitely use your touring schedule to really help you get extra coverage, because the clubs that you're playing at or your artists are performing at, they've got a PR team as well. So if you make them aware that your artist might be available for an interview, to do a quick radio spot, or they might do a DJ mix to help support that show, you get extra coverage in that country and they also get promotion for their kind of show. So it's a kind of win-win. I think, for example, we did some stuff with Fabric in Madrid earlier in this year. They're very proactive at doing things. Even if you're playing at Fabric, that Clara mentioned earlier, they have their own blog and they showcase different artists who are playing. So, really use those opportunities when you're playing abroad to get coverage in those key cities, whether it's Paris, Madrid, Milan, those kind of places. And also when you're playing at festivals, there's also huge interview and media opportunities there. If you reach out to kind of the festival PR to say you're available, they might have media partnerships that they're working with where they are looking for DJ mixes to support. So they could even help position you and get those slots if you can't do it yourself. So they are a wealth of opportunities. So don't forget those.
Okay, thank you. I think that we need to just close this topic at this point, even though I think there's a lot of questions that could be elaborated here. But I see Michelle. I don't do the
I'm
breakout
back.
rooms. I don't touch
To break the
nothing in
party.
Zoom. No, no, no. So like, I just want to say like, thank you. I saw some questions on the in the chat, but as you see, there's like so many things that we can discuss, and there's not enough time always. So I'm very grateful that you join us here, and thank you for your all the insights that you shared. So thanks a lot.
Our pleasure. And just quickly, if anyone's got any desperate questions, I'm quite happy for you to forward them on to me, and I can help with a written reply just in case, just so you're not missing out, because, you know, we're here to help you. So if they're just short questions, happy to do that.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you so much.